Picture It Los Angeles 2025.
Oh, welcome to Out on the Lanai, the only Golden Girls podcast you're ever going to need to listen to. I am HAlanScott / Sadie Pines.
I'm Kerri Doherty.
That's who
Oh,
we are.
that's who we are. I realized today's kind of a different day. We've got a
Yeah.
super big special surprise for everybody that I'm going to throw over to you because you are at the helm. You are steering this
Oh my
ship.
God. That means
Tell everybody what's happening
I
today.
feel like listenership is going to go down with you saying that. You can't, everyone expects your diligent direction on this podcast. So I apologize, everyone. No, today we are doing two things. We are going to be talking a little bit about the pilot episode of the Golden Girls, first off. And the reason why we're talking about the pilot is because of a show that Kerri and I went to go see because I was interviewing the cast and creative team behind this show that will be on Hulu on March 28th, Friday, March 28th, Mid-Century Modern, which, if you remember way back when this show was announced, is starring Nathan Lane, Matt Bomer, and Nathan Lee Graham, and Linda Lavin, of course, the late, wonderful Linda Lavin. It was being pegged in the press as the gay Golden Girls. Do you remember that, Kerri?
Oh, of course I do, because anytime there's Golden Girls news, you and I know a million people send it to us.
Which
And
we
so,
love.
which we love. Please
We
keep
love.
sending it. But yes,
Yeah.
anytime there is any kind of Golden Girls news, we get the notification. And I remember thinking like, I'm really curious to see what their take is going to be on this, how it's going to feel similar to the Golden Girls, how it's going to feel different, how it is going to feel, how they're going to put the modern and mid-century modern,
Yeah.
all of
yeah.
those questions.
So how I got involved with the coverage of or doing something for Mid-Century. So, of course, I was excited about Mid-Century Modern. Let me just say that. And around the time, maybe a little bit before the announcement of Mid-Century Modern. No, it was around the time Mid-Century Modern was out. I had also interviewed Bette Midler. And now this is going to be a roundabout story here. But I've interviewed Bette Midler a few times now. And one of the questions that I had for Bette, which was one of my favorite encounters I've ever had with Bette Midler, ever. And I will say, like, I just want to throw this out there because I feel like this is an audience that would appreciate this Bette Midler story. Bette Midler is one of the coolest interviews you can ever do, and she's solid. She is legit. Like, she's a pay it back celebrity in that she knew how much I loved her, and as soon as we were finished with the interview, like maybe a week later, I got a big package in the mail from Bette Midler just saying she had a great time in the interview. It's just like a class act all the way. So that's Bette Midler. So anyway, this chat I had with her, this a while back, it was I asked her about how I think it is a bit homophobic that she was never a guest star on Will and Grace, because it is shocking to me that they had so many amazing guest stars on Will and Grace, and Bette Midler, gay icon Bette Midler, was not one of them. Bette Midler, like basically Debbie Reynolds on the Golden Girls in that era, that's Bette Midler right now. Like, honestly, like that is Bette Midler. Anyway, so I was shocked that she was never on Will and Grace, and she had a really funny response to it. And she had mentioned that she's known Max Mutchnick, who is one of the co-creators of Will and Grace. Max and David Kohan both created Will and Grace, and they're the showrunners and all the things. And she had mentioned that she has known Max since he was a kid, and that she doesn't know why she was never on Will and Grace, and she's going to text Max. So then, of course, when I put the clip out, I follow, I'm big fans of Max. I had already been following him, but I tagged him in it. And then, of course, I started a text relationship with Max. And also, I've known Matt Bomer from previous interviews. So when this show was announced, I immediately messaged both Matt and Max being like, I'm going to do everything I can to talk about this show if it has anything to do in any capacity whatsoever with the gay Golden Girls. And they both immediately got very excited about that. So that's how all of this happened. And then Kerri and I found ourselves at a taping of Mid-Century Modern.
We did, but I want to talk about that because the taping was wonderful. But to go back, did you ask, hey, are you going to have Bette Midler on this show?
Yes,
Max?
I did. Yes, that is a part of the conversation. So,
okay.
And Max desperately wants Bette Midler. And in fact, this chat that I had with it was a group chat. We had a few chats, but the one that was filmed was with Matt Bomer, Nathan Lane, and Nathan Lee Graham. And even Nathan Lane was like, oh, we need to have Bette Midler on. Bette Midler has to be on. So I feel like I'm putting out into the world that Bette Midler will be on
I feel like
mid-century modern.
you're making this happen.
I will make this happen.
If Bette Midler is on next season of Mid-Century Modern, it is 100% you're doing.
And I will take. You guys know how shy I am and passive I am, but I will take credit. No, I'm not at all. But I will take credit. But no, go ahead.
Oh no, I also want to go back to, like, you know, you and I, huge Will and Grace fans, the original, the reboot, and I think I've told this story in the past on this podcast, but in case I haven't, when I was in high school and I was probably in 11th grade, maybe it was my senior year, my friend Michelle and I, we took over the theater arts class. We told the teacher, like, we have this, we got this, you can go get a coffee. And she was like, sure. 'Cause she was very supportive and was like, this has got a community feel, go for it. So we must have been seniors. We took over the class, and as soon as the door closed, it was like a real, like, fasten your seatbelt, slut puppies. We looked at everybody and we're like, here's what we do in this class now. We're gonna reenact episodes of Ellen and Will and Grace, and no questions shall be asked. And that's what we did. And former guest of this podcast, Ryan Clavin. Ryan was Jack and I was Grace. My friend Michelle, my friend Michelle was Karen.
Who was Karen? Oh, Michelle.
My friend Michelle. And she did a really good Karen. She had a higher vocal register. And I just remember, like, we did this one scene and the only joke I had was, damn, now I want a cookie. And then I exit and I was like, oh, Grace didn't have it. The show is Will and Grace had no lines. But I always remember Ryan Clavin as Jack. There was this one line that he had, and the way that Ryan delivered it in high school, I was like, you were born to be an actor. He goes like, it's Jack talking, they're talking about all the faces on Money. And Jack's like, I was always partial to one Ben Franklin. He wasn't afraid to wear his hair up and away from the face. And I always remembered that line. Oh, and welcome back, homo. Like, remember when Neil Patrick Harris was on? Just so many.
The
boobs squirting
it's
at
the
gallery.
The writing, and I talk, and
it's the best show.
So you can listen to my full chats with there's two different chats that are out. One is with Matt Bomer, Nathan Lane, and Nathan Lee Graham, and the other chat is with Max Mutchnick and David Kohan, and both are on Newsweek's Parting Shots. So you can go listen to that. Listen to the full long conversations that we had. They're like a half hour each. But I also spoke with them for video purposes, and those were more fun questions. And one of the questions that I asked the three stars of the show, because there is so much, this show, at the taping, we watched, and we were like, okay, this isn't necessarily a gay Golden Girls spinoff or anything like that. Like, that isn't like that. It's very much its own show, and it is very original, and it's very, very funny. And I think both Kerri and I can attest that, like, if you're a Golden Girls fan, you will like this show, correct?
Yeah. Oh my gosh. I laughed. I felt emotional. And I was like, that's what I want in a good sitcom. I want to laugh. I want to laugh hard. And I want to feel something. And that show delivered. I'm getting goosebumps thinking about the stuff because we watched the season finale. Not going to spoil anything. Yeah. But there were some moments in the season finale that have resonated with me, have stuck with me because they were very emotional and memorable.
And that's something we talk about because this show went through a lot. I mean, this show, obviously, Linda Lavin passed during the production of this show. And one of the things that I talked to Max and David about was that how Max was very clear. A death like that of a primary character in the first season of a show could ruin a show. And yet, in a weird way, it gave it new life. It gave the inspiration of Linda Lavin and sort of the brilliance of Linda Lavin and how they tackled talking about her death in real time while it was happening. They went back and rewrote scripts, and he was like, it gave us new direction, really. And she's sort of the spiritual showrunner of the show now, in a way, her spirit, which is a beautiful thing. And so it's such a funny show. The premise is these three friends, you know, all played by Matt Bomer, Nathan Lane, and Nathan Lee Graham. And Nathan Lane plays Bunny Schneiderman, who is a garment tycoon, an undergarment, like a bra tycoon, if you will. And the three of them have a mutual friend. In the pilot episode, they have a mutual friend who's passed away, and they're all at the funeral. And Bunny basically decides that, like, you know, he realizes that, like, at this point in his life, he's, you know, in his 60s, at this point in his life, he's always sort of struggled at love and finding love and figuring out relationships. And he realizes that the loves of his life are his two best friends, are these friends that he reconnected with at this funeral. And so he asks them to move in with him because, they're all sort of in these midpoints in their lives. One just lost a job. One is sort of, uncertain about things and is sort of flying around doing a thing. Matt Bomer plays a flight attendant, of course. So they decide to move in together. And that's the general premise. And it's about their lives together in this Palm Springs home. Now, at the beginning of my chat with the three of them, because of the whole gay Golden Girls bit, I had to ask them which Golden Girls character best matches their character on the show. Now, Matt and Nathan Lee Graham, they had very clear responses. Let's play that clip first. Let's just play that first.
Fantastic.
What Golden Girl matches each of your characters, would you say?
We were talking about this earlier. I think it's kind of a hybrid.
It's a hybrid because we have a mixture of it, but if you want to go to...
I would say Rose with a dash of Blanche for me.
You're wearing very tight clothes in this, so that's very
There's a dash of Blanche in there, and he has a couple real quick hookups.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it feels Blanchian.
He's always ready.
Always ready.
And see, I am more of a Dorothy with a dash of Blanche, because of the southern element to Arthur being from New Orleans, and then the sort of sartorial splendor with, I say Dorothy and Blanche have that,
Yeah.
So, okay, perfect. And those are very spot on for their characters.
Very, very spot
spot
on.
on.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
You see that with them.
Oh, I see it. Matt Bomer, the Rose, and he did have a lot of Rose moments that were so sweet. That were so sweet. And then, Nathan Lee Graham. I mean, yes. And when you watch the show, you'll be like, yep, got it.
You get it. It's very much that. But Nathan, now we intentionally pulled back before Nathan Lane answered the way he answered, because Nathan Lane said something that, well, let's just play what he said and then we'll react. Let's do that. Okay, yeah. Okay.
So,
Yeah,
and what
I don't think Bunny is. I don't think he's anything like any of those.
I don't either.
He really is his own. It's their own creation.
Yeah.
Max and David.
Yeah.
Because he's very. He's kind of neurotic and
He's very Max-coded.
Yes.
Oh, do you think?
and super smart.
Very intelligent.
Yeah, but he's I mean, there's he's needy and insecure and yet he's very loving and generous, wildly generous.
He's all of the things.
He's a lot of things. He's a lot.
He's a lot. He's definitely a lot.
He's a lot.
While you would think in the moment, as a journalist myself, you would think in the moment, oh, that's a bit of a disappointing response, because you would hope that he would have like I think he's Dorothy or something. But when I left and I was thinking about his response, and there's much more to our chat, which you should go watch at newsweek.com. But as I was thinking about his response, I was like, wait, that is the most Dorothy response there could be. That is the most, that is the most B. Arthur type response. That's B. Arthur responding to the Television Academy when she was asked about her service in the Navy. Her being like, oh, I didn't do that. When we know you did.
Yeah, it is such a Dorothy response. And the funny thing is Dorothy Spornak is a teacher, and she clearly didn't understand the assignment here.
No, it's so funny. It's so funny to me that and then when you watch the show, I mean, Nathan is correct. Bunny Sharnham is definitely its own character, and he's Max coded in that he's very much a version of Max Mutchnick, very much a version of Max Mutchnick. But that said, Max is also very Dorothy coded, so you have that. So yeah, there definitely is some parallels between the characters on the Golden Girls. And for this episode of the podcast, I thought it would be fun to revisit the pilot of the Golden Girls, because it really it is a template for shows like this, shows that were like this. Because if you think about it, and I've even struggled to find other examples of shows about a demographic of people moving in together as roommates that you wouldn't normally see as roommates sharing their lives. Like on Friends, it makes sense. You get why they're living
you're
together.
in your 20s, you have roommates because you can't afford to live alone. That's just what you do. You're single. Yeah.
But even shows like, for example, Frasier, who, you know, moves in with his father. Like, that makes sense. That
Yeah.
there's a
Yep.
rationale
Your
there that
parents
would make
become a
sense.
certain age, you move in, you
Yeah.
take care of them. Exactly.
And there's like a housekeeper slash therapist that's sort of like, it all makes sense. Whereas with the Golden Girls, and even with Mid-Century Modern, this should not work out. Like, these people should not normally be living together in this way.
I mean,
But
that's
yet-
why the Golden Girls did a whole episode where they go to therapy because they're like, we can't live together.
Yeah, yeah. So it is, and B. Arthur, we know from her interviews and things that she said, she even said the premise of the Golden Girls is kind of crazy because she would not want to live with her friends. So, like, that's, I think, what makes Golden Girls so unique, and that's also what makes Mid-Century Modern so unique, is that it is just a different kind of show that will speak to you in the same way that the Golden Girls spoke to you. So that's what I figured we'd do today.
I love that. And as we're just sort of talking about the premise of Mid-Century Modern and these people living together, it's also kind of giving me First Wives Club vibes in
Yes,
that
a little bit.
there's a passing of a mutual friend that brings old friends back together to kind of rediscover their relationship and maybe a new purpose in life that they can have with their friendship. So, and that is, I'm getting goosebumps again.
It is
and that
something
is really,
special.
Again, we talk about how special the Chosen family is with the Golden Girls and in life. And yeah, I think that's what it is when we surround ourselves with people who fill up our cup. And of course, they get on our nerves sometimes, but yeah, there is something beautiful about that. And it certainly makes me feel less alone. You know?
Definitely. So look, we're going to talk, I'm going to share more about Mid-Century Modern stuff, but also we're going to talk about the pilot episode of the Golden Girls. So we'll be right back after this break. Yay!
Yay!
Okay, so the Golden Girls pilot, in watching it again, now we've seen this pilot how many times now? I mean, like, it's just nonstop and it's amazing.
Thousands.
And it's wonderful. And the jokes, the amount of jokes in this pilot, it is joke on joke on joke to the point where, and Dorothy particularly, there are so many jokes for B. Arthur that she has so many, and they're not even jokes. They're like wry comebacks to like stuff other people said that it almost would be offensive in real life. Like, it almost like if someone was doing that in real life, it would be like, okay, enough. You're too on right now, you know?
Yeah. And I think too, with the pilot episode, what's so great is that within these jokes are character traits. We're learning about these women and who they are and how they're going to interact with each other within all of these jokes. I mean, Dorothy's first line tells us exactly who she is. I taught a class today. She's a teacher. Finest school in Dade County. 2 girls had shaved heads and 3 boys had green hair. They're expressing themselves, says Coco. Well, I expressed myself. I told them they had to leave. They were too ugly to look at. Just that. It's like, okay, she's a teacher.
Yeah.
She does not. She is very straightforward. Maybe a little bit too straightforward at times.
Yeah.
It's, now the parents are mad. We're learning so much about who they are, and it's funny. It's so funny.
And you know what's crazy? So like we often talk about like justice for Coco on this podcast and how amazing Coco is. And in a small way, I think in a parallel universe, Bunny Schneiderman from Mid-Century Modern could have been an early Coco. Or one of them. I mean, there's the Mid-Century Modern is Coco coded. Like there is something.
Say Coco coded as a vocal warm up before going out on stage as Sadie.
No, but it's true. Because I mean, in my article in the feature that I did for Mid-Century Modern, one of the things that I was struck by was, when Will and Grace came out in 1998, it was revolutionary for television. This is literally the first, I think, opening line of my article, that it was revolutionary in that there was the sheer lack of representation on television for LGBTQ plus people. I mean, the landscape for television comedies, sitcoms in particular, at that time, there was only Ellen. There was nothing else. And then Ellen got canceled and then Will and Grace started. And that quite literally was what happened. Like, it was just so.
And we also have to remember that Ellen wasn't gay for the entire run of the show.
So Will and Grace started And it was revolutionary because it was how this show was. It was the premise of this show. And David talks about how Will and Grace was just a romantic comedy with one really big obstacle that got in the way of them falling in love, and which is such a funny concept. But and that's why it's such a brilliant show. But what struck me with that is that watching Coco now rewatching the pilot episode, how rare it was for a character like Coco to exist on television in 1985. And now how rare, even though there are queer characters all over television, not enough, but there are plenty of queer characters on television. There aren't that many gay male characters, queer characters in general, of any gender, leading a sitcom. It's just not happening. And that's what makes Mid-Century Modern revolutionary. Golden Girls was revolutionary for a lot of reasons in 1985. Will and Grace was for a very specific reason, and now Mid-Century Modern is, I think, as well. And I think you need to mark those moments when shows like this come along that are doing something very different, but yet within the framework of something that is so cozy and comfortable, like a multicam sitcom, you know?
Yeah, I agree with you in that. Yes, this moment should be marked in pop culture history and television history. And it also just goes to show that in 2025, there are still revolutionary things that we can be doing in this space that is so familiar and so comfortable, like a sitcom.
Yeah, it's comfort food. Max said it, but it's true. It is comfort food for our eyeballs and our hearts and our ears. Totally.
It is comfort food. And I think, too, the cool thing about Mid-Century Modern, I believe they're dropping all of the episodes at once.
Yeah.
So, like, you can binge this.
And you know what? I did that. I got all the episodes before I had to chat with them. I watched all 10 episodes one night sitting there. And I have to tell you, the same feeling, and I think I even said this in my chat with Max and David, but the same feelings that I had when I suffer from anxiety. I don't think that's a surprise on this podcast. And a lot of times to calm down, I will do the thing where I just sit on the couch and I put on one thing that I know I can just binge and I can just let play and I can do the things I need to do, but just calm down. And that day that I binged all 10 episodes of Mid-Century Modern, I had the same feeling that I had when I would come home from work after a very stressful day, like in New York or whatever, when I would come home and I would put on a DVD of the Golden Girls and just let it play, or Will and Grace and just let it play. And it calmed me down and it gave me a distraction of the stress that I was feeling or the depression or the anxiety or whatever it is. And that's what these shows are good for. Like, oh my God.
It's what they're great for. I'm in the same boat with you with while we're opening up here, I can't be alone with my thoughts. Silence is a terrorist in my mind. I'm sure many of you can relate. So, even when I go to take a shower, I feel like that is when sometimes some of the most intrusive thoughts
really?
So I bring my phone into the bathroom and I prop it up and I will put on an episode of The Golden Girls just to hear it. And that is very calming for me. Is too, and I feel like The Golden Girls is incredibly calming and comforting to every Golden Girls fan.
Definitely.
Yeah. And I'm sure there are some therapists who in the comments are going to be like, you should really work on that. You should just put on an episode of The Golden Girls forever.
No, if they're listening to this, they completely understand and relate.
So yeah, I agree that those shows are so important to so many people for so many reasons.
Yeah.
And I really hope that Mid-Century Modern becomes another Golden Girls, another Will and Grace, another show that people find themselves getting to know the characters, falling in love with the characters, wanting to follow them and feeling that same kind of comfort and joy, not to quote Christmas songs, but that they find that same comfort and joy.
And I feel like I should have said this at the beginning of the episode, but I didn't. And so, friends, I'm saying it now. This isn't sponsored by anybody. We're saying Mid-Century Modern a lot, and it's only because we really like this show. And I feel like someone listening to me and like they got sponsored. No, this is not. We have no money from Disney, Hulu, Mid-Century Modern.
No, I haven't been promised a job.
Nothing. We got nothing. This is us. This is quite literally just us liking something so much that we want you to like it as much as we like it. That's literally what this is. Which is, I think. Yeah. Frankly, in this era of how podcasts and influencers and everything are, I kind of like when people just fan out on something in an authentic and organic way, and that is exactly what we're doing here.
Yeah, yeah. When a big YouTuber is like, I can't live without my Nespresso machine. This is not sponsored by Nespresso. They don't send me anything for free. I'm not asking. I just want everybody to know how happy Nespresso makes me. Yeah.
It's refreshing. I don't know. Anyways, the other thing that I love about the Golden Girls pilot, and what I think is so tricky with pilots in general, just people who love television, writing a good pilot that also feels like just a great episode of a show that could land anywhere really in the show's timeline is hard to do. It's hard to find that balance.
Very hard.
Because you gotta introduce characters, but you also have to introduce their personalities in a way that makes them stand out and makes them unique. And I think Golden Girls, of course, did it brilliantly because we know from the get-go, we know pretty much exactly who these characters are and their points of view and the types of people they are. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I think, if you look at it in terms of like plot, because you're right in that there are a lot of pilots that will do what's called a premise episode where there's a big change. So Frasier's dad moves in with him. That's what the story is about. It's a very character-driven, emotional story about, well, what happens when he moves in. This isn't a premise pilot. It's just like Everybody Loves Raymond. I think the pilot episode of that was Raymond forgot Deborah's birthday. Oh, Raymond. And I think that was it. And for this, it is
Deborah.
like, yes, Deborah.
God.
Blanche gets engaged. She might be getting married. While that feels like
A premise.
a premise-y thing, it's actually not, because she doesn't actually get married, and her getting engaged just inspired that is none of the plot. It's not her getting, actually getting married. It inspires these conversations between the women, and that's what the show is about. Being a woman of a certain age and being like, oh my gosh, we're going to get married, like getting married again at this age, all this sort of stuff. And that's what it inspired. And I think it's such a cool and interesting choice that Susan Harris was like, it's going to be Blanche getting engaged. And I guess it's also, Sophia coming for a visit and seeing Sophia and Dorothy's dynamic. But
it's just so, and similarly with Mid-Century Modern, like, these characters from the get-go. As soon as you meet Bunny, Arthur, and Jerry, you know exactly who they are. Bunny is the Dorothy. Bunny is the one who sort of is the, has the head on their shoulders and has the good house and all of the things. Arthur is the more artistic friend who is recently out of work, who's just sort of like always says it like it is and has a witty retort to something. And you would think that, which is the Dorothy in Arthur, which is fully the Dorothy in Arthur. But there's also like a suaveness that gives Arthur very much Blanche. And then of course Jerry is incredibly hot. Matt Bomer is incredibly hot. That man wears the tightest clothes of anyone I have ever seen on television.
Shirts. I made a comment to you, and pants. I made a comment to you at one point while we were watching the taping, and I said, it is warm in here. Matt Bomer is wearing a very tight shirt.
Yes.
I do not see a single sweat stain.
Yeah.
And I don't know how that is happening.
I think there's multiple shirts involved. I honestly do. I think there's a train.
Where? How? Is it a skin shirt? Because
I don't know.
Those shirts are tight, and you
They're
can tell
tight.
that they are very, very tight.
I mean,
and I'm not objectifying him by talking about his body right now. I am saying I was very impressed.
I think it was on display for us. I'm just saying.
At the lack of sweat stains.
Yes, same. Yes. And so you definitely, when you meet Jerry, this is a Rose meets Blanche. Like this is a man who has some fun in the sun, if you will, but he also isn't always there upstairs. And so it's a fun, and these characters from the beginning. So it's the same on the Golden Girls, which is incredible. Now, like the actual, like the rest of the episode of the Golden Girls, what I find about the pilot episode of the Golden Girls is that while I'm getting to know these characters, I actually don't really care that much about the wedding storyline. I'm more fascinated. I'm more fascinated by Rose's reaction to it.
Yeah, and that's why I'm saying, like, I think again, Blanche getting married or Blanche getting engaged, that's not what it's about. It's the conversations that it inspires with the women.
Yeah.
And again, but so brilliantly done. And what an organic way to, get our women to having these conversations.
Well, also those conversations between Rose and what Rose is going through about, being of a certain age without a husband and thinking, and she's finally feeling safe and secure in this family, this chosen family that she's found herself in. But because of her own sort of experience in life, she's scared. And that's something that at that time, there wasn't really on television. Having the thought of a widow who it doesn't have the prospect of getting married again, doesn't necessarily have family close by, is choosing to live an independent life. She's going to need her friends. She's going to need that family. And it's the same thing with Mid-Century Modern, in that here's Bunny Schneiderman, who has reached a point in his life where he's never really had that great romance. He's never really had that. And that's something that I think a lot of queer people, particularly I think queer men, and there's a line in the first episode that I write about in the article because it hits me, where Matt Bomer's character says that we survived the nightmare of the 80s. And you immediately know, if you're a queer person and you know anything about LGBTQ history of the last however many years, you immediately know exactly what he's talking about. He's talking about HIV/AIDS and the epidemic and what happened and how that just ravaged the community in the 1980s and 90s. And the PTSD that stays with you after that, how that dictates your life in a way, and the decisions that you make in your life, and maybe even your inability to express love. I mean, in my chat with the guys, Nathan Lee Graham talks about how he moved to New York City at the height of the AIDS epidemic, and he was afraid to kiss. He was afraid to have sex. He was afraid, and he jokingly says that he just really enjoys playing a character that's had more sex than him, and which I think is fun. But like he openly talked about that, and that's a real thing that I think a lot of particularly gay men can relate to from that era. And I think Bunny is an example of that, in that it was similar to how Rose was an example for women that their stories were not being told on television at that time in 1985. I think the stories of gay men getting older and dealing with the reality of how that impacted their lives, those stories aren't being told. And even in my chat with Max said very frank, we did not talk about AIDS on Will and Grace in the way that we should have. And he wanted to bring it up as a theme within a sitcom, not a very special episode moment, but like literally how it impacted.
An acknowledgement, yeah.
Yeah, which I think is just so brilliant, and another example of what made Golden Girls so revolutionary and what makes Mid-Century Modern so great,
Yeah, those are really great parallels that you've drawn just now. And I'm looking at just some quotes from the pilot episode of The Golden Girls, and it is a very impactful moment where Rose is talking about, you get married, you have kids, your kids grow up and move out, your husband dies, and now what? Your kids have their own families. And she says, we were all so lonely, and then by a miracle, we found each other, which is very poignant moment, which of course, because it's a sitcom, is undercut by Dorothy's joke, where she says, Rose, we both answered an ad to share Blanche's house that we found in the supermarket. It was not the resurrection. It's hardly a miracle. And then you go back to the suite, and Rose says, to me it was, because we're happy.
Oh,
Again, goosey bumps.
Yeah, I know.
It's beautiful, and it's beautiful that Blanche, when her engagement doesn't work out because she was swindled by a criminal, by a cheese man like guy.
Yes.
She's got her friends there, to lean on and to support her and to get her through it. And again, that's also what we're seeing in the series is men are going to come and go in these women's lives, but when it doesn't work out, they're going to be there to prop each other up. They're going to be there to support each other. Yeah. And that's what, you're going to see with Mid-Century Modern too.
And there's also, and I'll share this, and then we can go to break, and we'll come back with our golden takeaways. This episode's a little bit out of format because we went long in the opening, and so whatever. You guys are getting a very relaxed episode from us today, which I love. But another thing that I think is so fascinating about Mid-Century Modern that kind of speaks to the relationship between Dorothy and Sophia a little bit is, and Max talked to me about this during our chat, about that relationship that a gay son has with their mother. And it is, there is an element of, between Bunny and Linda Lavin's character's name is Sybil, there is a very Dorothy Sophia element to them in that Linda Lavin just does not hold back with Bunny at all. Just like, literally, there's a line that says something like, I wanted you to grow up to be a man or something. And then he goes, well, then why'd you name me Bunny? And like, it's a perfect back and forth, and very similar to Dorothy and Sophia. And when Max was talking about that relationship, so like, you get to that point when, for example, in Sybil's life, her husband died, and she needed something in life. Like, she needed a direction in life. She needed to feel that she was still alive and had worth. And Bunny was like, well, move in with me and work at the store if you want, and like, do your own thing. And so Bunny, being the wealthy person, the wealthy character that he is, had his mom move into like the guest house and sort of has her own life, and she can do her own thing. And she's Linda Lavin is so good on Mid-Century Modern. And it reminds me of how brilliant Estelle Getty was on the Golden Girl. How much of
and
a
how
surprise.
Sophia came to live with them sort of unexpectedly.
Yeah, really brilliant. And what I love is that, like, it's true. Like, at a certain point in your life, at least I've experienced that with my mom as the gay son amongst all my brothers, that my brothers are still just my mom's, like, they're her sons. Like, they're just they're kids, like, to her. Like, that's what.
Yeah.
But the relationship with my mom, it's become more like we're friends. Like, there's just a different conversation, a different way that her and I talk, which I don't think is unique, because I feel like a lot of gay sons can appreciate that there is that relationship you have with your mom that is just different than maybe your brothers might have with your mom, your straight brothers might have with your mom. And you see that on Mid-Century Modern.
Yeah. It's really nice. And it was, so I haven't seen every episode like you have, but when we went to the taping, before they taped the episode, they showed us another episode that Linda Lavin was in. And watching her, I was like, she's such a Sophia.
She really is.
It was,
In that episode, I just want to share a little bit about that episode. So there's one, I mean, there are many episodes with Linda Lavin, because she's in most of that season, the first season. And in that episode, the three guys they decide to go back to Fire Island to sort of like live their Fire Island life. They used to go, that's how they met, I believe. It was in Fire Island. And they decide to go back now that they have money and they can like do it right. They decide to go back and sort of like relive their youth in Fire Island, if you will, and try to meet men and all that. And Sybil, Linda Lavin's character, stays back in Palm Springs and like holds down the fort, if you will. And
just like they've done with Sophia.
Just like they did with Sophia, exactly. And there's a moment in which she gets one of those like not prank calls, but they're like
no,
like
it's a
scam.
it's a scam, meant to, which is very common, meant to rob, especially take advantage of the older people to take their money.
And on it, so she then this is such a Sophia moment.
Yeah.
She somehow is able to connect with the scam artist in such a way that she basically gets them to give up their scamful life and give it up or whatever. And it's just such a funny episode because
it's so great.
It's just
so
her
great.
on the phone. It's just her on the phone.
That's acting.
I mean,
she's doing a monologue.
Yeah, basically. It's so good. It's good.
Incredible. Before we take our break, I just want to let everybody know what's happening in the GGVIP Club this week. So this upcoming Saturday, if you're in the GGVIP Club at the $8 a month level, we're doing another Golden Girls Live watch-along party where we all hang out on Zoom. We have snacks. You provide your own. We have drinks, alcoholic or non-alcoholic. We watch an episode of the Golden Girls. We talk about it in the chat. We do a Q&A afterwards. It's so much fun. We're doing that this Saturday at 4 p.m. Eastern, 1 p.m. Pacific time.
Yeah.
And also in the GGVIP Club, Rusty Anchor Happy Hour this week. I've realized there are a lot of amazing Reddit threads devoted to the Golden Girls. So we are starting a new series called Golden Girls Reddit. And this week, we're going to be reading about fans like wildest mysteries that they still can't solve. So we're going to go through mysteries on the Golden Girls that fans can't solve, and we're going to see if we can solve them. And that's going to be the first in a series because, like I said, the Golden Girls Reddit community is on fire.
I don't often go on Reddit because it scares me, but I cannot wait for this conversation.
Yeah,
well,
it's not 4chan. It's Reddit, but
oh, it's 4chan.
I understand how it can be overwhelming to solve.
You'll have to explain to me 4chan on the rest of your happy hour.
Sure.
But let's take a break and we'll come back with our golden takeaway.
Great.
And we're back with our golden takeaways, which is a nugget of truth or inspiration that you can apply to your lives or the lives of our listeners. Kerri, what's your golden takeaway from this episode?
I want to keep seeing sitcoms and sitcom creators showing us representation on sitcom television that we haven't yet seen.
Yes.
That is what I want. I know that Chuck Lorre can fart in a bag and they'll put it on television, but I would love to see.
No shade to Chuck Lorre. Love Chuck Lorre.
Oh yeah, no shade to Chuck Lorre. But, there are some sitcoms out there that it's like, yeah, we've seen this. Oh, a father and a daughter and then they got to move in together. Okay. Yeah. Give me a version of that let's show underrepresented people on television, because it does seem like sitcoms are the way to get through to people who may not know people like that in their lives.
Yes.
So it really does feel like for those who have the power to do it, to get more sitcoms like that on television.
Mm-hmm.
That's my golden takeaway.
I've always thought, and this is just, I don't want to go through a list of different types of people I want to see on sitcoms, but I have a list because I just remember as a kid, I have my brother has cerebral palsy and has abilities that are just different from mine. And I remember as a kid being like, why is this not on Step by Step? Like, why is this? And why is that the only time this is on one of these shows I'm watching? It's a very special episode. And it's like, he's just as annoying as I am. He doesn't need a special episode. Every episode can be annoying. Like, I don't know why. Like, it never made sense to me as a kid because I just felt like this was my reality and I'm not seeing it on television. It was very similar to when I was a kid and I this isn't a sitcom, but when I saw The Birdcage, and I remember seeing, and I've talked about this on the podcast before, and I told them this today when I had the interview with them, but that I saw Nathan Lane in The Birdcage, and I saw Albert, his character Albert, and how much I related to Albert, and it scared me because he was the type of person that you're not supposed to want to be. Do you know what I mean? Like society tells you you're not supposed to be this type of person, flamboyant, over the top, all the things. And it scared me when I was a kid. And then as I got older and now watching, Mid-Century Modern and whatever, that you realize, and I've become Albert. I've literally become the character of Albert in real life.
I mean, you do screech when you pierce the toast.
I literally walked in with my bag, which is like this massive bag, right? And I'm just sort of like a mess, and I'm just like, I'm fumbling, and I'm obnoxious, and I understand that about myself. But that said, and of course I do drag, and boyfriend makes my outfits. So there is very much the through line of me being Albert. That said,
and I'm your Dan Futterman. I'm just you're kind of a drag son.
No.
You're like, no, I love you, but
you're
I'm
Diane
ready for
Lee.
you to go home.
You're Callista Flockhart. No, okay.
Yeah, I was like, okay. I feel like
you got to do drag. She got to do drag in it. That's cool.
Oh well, no. I feel like she's likable in that. It's just like her parents were kind of annoying.
Dan is not. No, and Diane Wiest is very likable in it.
She is.
Even Gene Hackman is. They're all likable. In a different kind of way.
In a different kind of way. That
said, just like to your point, that I saw the representation of the person that I actually am because my parents allowed me to go see that movie, and it became it's a tent pole of my life. It's like a big moment for me. And I feel like television sitcoms, being as intimate as they are in your living room or on your phone now or whatever it is, have that ability too. That there's just that intimate experience where you can really show people different walks of life in a fun, creative, funny way that then leads to people being nicer to other people, which is really ultimately all we want. So anyway, that's not my golden takeaway because that was Kerri's golden takeaway. But my golden takeaway from this is that I want more sitcoms in general. I want more multicam sitcoms on television, on streaming services. I think, we're in a world in which television is sort of like splintered in lots of different ways, and there's lots of different things, and sitcoms are not the thing that is just on television. But that said, the biggest shows of the past 20 years are both multicam sitcoms. It's How I Met Your Mother and it's the Big Bang Theory. And so there's a market for great multicam sitcoms, and if you find that lane, and if you go out there and you're watching shows like Mid-Century Modern, they'll keep making shows multicam sitcoms like Mid-Century Modern. And so
find that lane, find that Nathan Lane.
Yeah, find that Nathan Lane. So yeah, that's my golden takeaway is I want more multicam sitcoms.
I think that's great. Put that out into the world.
I just did. I have a podcast.
Well, this has been such a fun chat, and everyone definitely check out Mid-Century Modern, March 28th, every episode on Hulu. It truly is a joy. I can't wait to watch the rest of the episodes that I haven't yet seen. Funnily enough, I saw the last episode first, so
but again,
that'll be
great writing because you knew immediately you got it.
I did. I was not lost. I was not lost, except I did think that, so they actually showed us an earlier episode and I thought it was the pilot. And so I looked over at you and I was like, why are they all spending the pilot away from the house? Why aren't they all together? And then they were like, and that was, episode 4 or whatever. And I was like, oh, okay. That wasn't actually the pilot. Because I was like, why don't we know why they're all together? I don't know. I was like whispering to you and you were like, shh, like, we'll figure it out.
We'll figure it out.
Yeah.
We'll figure it out. Yeah, no, that was great though.
So yeah, but it was a great time. Highly recommend it. And yeah, this has been fun. And if you all watch it, let us know what you think of it. And we will be back here next week for more Golden Girls greatness. And remember that you can check out the GGVIP Club at patreon.com/Golden Girls Podcast. You can sign up for a free account, but of course you get the most benefits at the $5 and $8 a month level. And if you pay for a year in full, it's like less than a nickel a day.
Oh, wow. Very Sally Struthers, feed the children of you. Guys, we are part of Mom Moguls of Media, and you can, of course, follow us at all the socials on Golden Girls Pod on the Twitters, Out on the Lanai Officials on the Instagrammals, Golden Girls Pod on the Facebooks, and I'm HAlanScott / Sadie Pines on, well, most things.
And I'm Squidzy on Instagram and Squid Eats Squid on Twitter. Not very active these days, though, so...
I mean,
you can pop a follow.
Who wants to be active these days when you have sitcoms to watch?
Seriously. Hey.
See what I did? And remember,
as always,
stay golden.
Stay golden.
Stay golden. Stay so golden. We love you. Stay golden. Goodbye.
Out on the Lanai is not endorsed by Whit Thomas Harris Productions, Touchstone Television, Disney, or any of its subsidiaries. It is intended for entertainment and informational purposes only.
All names, pictures, audio, and video clips of the Golden Girls are registered trademarks and/or copyrights of their respective trademark and/or copyright holders.